Hey, Cesar, how you doing?
Good, and you?
We're in the middle of moving over here, so it's like trying to
Oh,
balance work and moving. Have you ever moved?
well, let me tell you a story. So I moved out of my parents' house in Mexico in 2011, and I moved to Guadalajara, and then I lived there for 1 year, and then I moved to the States. And since then, the year after I moved, then this last year I didn't. Then this year I'm gonna move because I'm getting married.
Oh, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So you're still young and happy and full of optimism and exuberance for life and everything, but once you're married and you have kids and everything, you will never hate your stuff more than when you have to move it. Unbelievable. It's all media too. It's like all this stuff that is completely obsolete now.
Mm-hmm.
My wife insists that everything goes in the right box so that we'll know where it is when we get to the new house, whereas I'm more like just put everything that's near each other in the same box. It's crazy. What I really want is just to put everything in the yard and just set it on fire and become like a Buddhist monk. That's where my head's at right now.
Oh my.
Cesar, welcome to the podcast. I just need to do this little intro here. Hello and welcome to Device Squad, the enterprise mobility podcast from Propelics. Device Squad, fighting crimes against enterprise mobility worldwide. Bad UI, frustrating user experiences, poorly conceived mobile strategies, we defeat them all. This podcast series will cover all aspects of enterprise mobility, including strategy, development, design, testing, and more. My name is Steve Brickman. I'm a mobile strategist and UX architect with Propelics. First, a brief history of the company. Founded in 2011, Propelics is a mobile strategy consultancy helping enterprises worldwide devise true mobile strategies and develop world-class mobile applications across all industry verticals. Propelics clients include large companies like Amway, Bright Horizons, Bank of Montreal, Dubai Airports, Family Dollar, DLL, Cintas, Merck, and many more. Propelics' menu of services includes 8 different mobile kickstarts, covering everything from mobile strategy and road mapping to MCOE to UI UX design to mobile testing strategy, along with soup to nuts app design development and support. Additionally, Propelics offers 3 homegrown enterprise mobile products. Today we have with us Cesar Cavazos. Now, Cesar is a senior mobile app architect with Propelics. We'll talk a bit about the Propelics prototyping process. We'll talk about where he sees enterprise mobility headed in the next few years. And we'll talk a bit about mobile application development platforms. Why don't we start by, you could just tell us a little bit about your background in technology.
All right. So my background in technology starts on the desktop world, not even the web world. I didn't do a lot of web development, but I did build a few programs. Now we call them apps around a point of sale system. So my family owned a grocery distribution warehouse on the city market, and we had a really bad point of sale system and just overall sales and purchases and inventory and all that stuff. It was really bad. So I actually developed a new version that it was simpler, but it was Java based. Printers, scanners, inventory, it had a lot of stuff. So as I was making it better, I realized that there were a lot of people in the local market that needed it. So I founded my first company and I started selling it there as well as other places in the local city. I think I reached around like 56 customers in a matter of 5 years. It was something that I really liked, that it helped my own family. But at some point I decided, you know what? I just want to move into mobile. I was trying to keep up on that, plus trying to learn mobile. iOS was big around late 2000s and I couldn't spend the time. So I sold it to my partner and then I decided to move and I joined Accelerator in 2012. working with Observator Titanium technology as well as native iOS development. After that, it has been a roller coaster of mobile development technologies. I did a little bit of Android native. I did some PhoneGap. Right now, I'm more focused just because I have spent a lot of time on Titanium. I'm more focused on all the projects. I would say like 70% of my projects at Propelics are AppC Titanium technologies. And then I do have some native ones. Currently, on my extra time, if I have any, is Swift. I have been playing with Swift for quite a while. I think I'm getting ready to start my first end-to-end project. I just could code pieces, POCs, and stuff like that, but I haven't actually built an entire enterprise project from end to end on Swift.
And how did you wind up working for Propelics?
So when I was in AppC, at some point I decided to move on and to try to look for other careers. At that time, I realized that I really like consulting more than engineering work. I like to talk to people and I like to iterate fast without losing the quality. And I think Propelics is one of the companies that actually does both. We have pretty tough deadlines, but the quality in the products that we build, it's never compromised by time. So that was one of the motivations. I knew about Propelics because Propelics has been a partner of AppC for a while. And one of my ex-coworkers actually ended up here. I was talking to him and he was just telling me how things were and what was the kind of work and things that we were doing. So I reached out and decided that it was going to be a good fit.
I've never really worked for a company that was geared towards delivering prototypes and strategy so quickly. What's amazing is that despite that, we're able to go from ideation to a prototype in about 2 weeks. That we still, rather than just create like a mock kind of a prototype that would use like PSD hotspots and so forth, we still take that extra step and we build all the prototypes in Accelerator so that they're real working applications. And I was hoping that you could talk about why we do this, first of all, and why it's worth doing it this way.
The way that you can really understand mobile in these big enterprises is by actually using apps. And we do see a lot of like consumer apps from the store, and they spend a lot of time working in a single app. Now, companies nowadays, they want to have a whole portfolio of apps, and we actually help them get there. But most of them, they don't really use anything else than email, or most of the people involved in those decisions, they use email, probably a calendar app in their phone, but they don't really get the mobile user interface and user experience. Now, our team does a great job of translating web and translating business requirements into a mobile experience, but the only way for you to experience it is by using an app. So building a prototype in, we said 2 weeks, it's actually probably like 1 week, just because the first week is requirements and trying to get that together.
Yeah, it really
is quite a challenge. So long nights and trying to understand. But at the end of the day, what I keep telling the team is we're telling a story, a real case for that company's story where you can actually see the value of investing in creating that specific app. I'm not saying that once you get the feeling of an enterprise app is something that you should just start building apps randomly. No, you should continue to prototype because every app is different. Telling that story on how somebody can save time, can have out of the pocket the information or interaction that they need to do to accomplish their job is what it's about the prototype. Now, the next phase on those prototypes, it took us some time, but I think we have actually nailed it down to a process where that prototype can also help the architect team on the delivery side of Propelics as a bootstrap to launch this app. Most of the time, we already define the navigation. Most of the time, we define the main core components of the app. Is it going to scan a barcode, or is it going to use speech-to-text recognition? How we're going to be handling that? So there is a lot of R&D involved in that week that may actually solve a lot of the issues on the planning and architecture of that app when the project starts. So our process, it's not only understanding the idea, it's also putting a baseline that we can say we can deliver an app in 6 weeks or in 8 weeks, depending on the size of the app. But as fast as probably 4 weeks, we have done it, an end-to-end app. And the prototype really, really helped us on that.
Are there limitations on the client side based on how their systems are set up? Has that ever been a problem in the past?
Oh, yes, of course. I can tell you one example around security. Mobile change security in a way that a phone, it's going to be outside of your network, right? You can have some MDM and MAM solutions to still get the VPN access and everything, but most of the time that phone is going to be outside, especially because now a lot of companies allow their employees to bring their own device, BYOD, right? So these devices are not corporate owned, and they may run corporate apps. So how, if your infrastructure never thought about having an employee coming with their laptop and working, then you probably are not ready for that kind of paradigm. So there is a lot of security compliance with some of the customers, and that was one of the examples. So as part of the prototype, there is a couple of technical design sessions on how viable this is. We can have a pretty nice app, good-looking app. It provides value. But if your technology is not ready to support it, then we have a blocker there. And I have had several situations where, well, not only we're going to build the app, or the customer is going to build the app with our guidance, but they also have to involve some services and security team to enable this app to be successful.
All of our jobs are very different from each other. We work across all verticals, and we do all kinds of apps for all these different companies, but somehow you guys are able to deliver these prototypes in just a few days. How are you able to work so quickly and build these prototypes in just a handful of hours?
I work pretty well on pressure. I like challenges on that aspect. That's my personal thing. I'm not the only one who builds prototypes, and we have always delivered a prototype on time. So how do we do that is we have the right tool set. So we prepare for that in a way that we know if it's a prototype based on iOS or on Android, we know what's the boilerplate where we start. We have a process to ask the right questions. I don't need to understand the whole business to build the prototype, to tell a story. The only things that I do need is, what's the story? If I understand what's the story and I understand what are we trying to accomplish, I can even have my input and negotiate a feature or two things where I say, hey, you know what? We can do this for the prototype, and then for the full app, we're going to build this feature. But I can give you something that provides that experience that allows you as the strategy to tell the story. And then we're going to add it into the app. But manage the scope on a fast way is something that must be done on the prototypes. And you get that by experience and by long nights.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how it works out, but I've been on jobs where the prototype gets delivered like 15 minutes before the readout meeting. I don't know if you've had that, but the Hyundai project was like that. It was a squeaker.
We actually built 2 prototypes on 1 week. And it was just one of us from the technical team. It was one from the UI UX team, one strategist. So building 2 prototypes in a week has been a really, really big challenge. There were 2 business cases, totally different. And that one, while we were demoing the first prototype, I was actually compiling the second prototype. So don't tell anybody that, but I did push another version the moment we were demoing the first prototype. So I found a little bug, and I was like, you know what? It may be because sometimes we're not the ones running the prototype, not even the strategist. It's the customer that it is reading that story and convincing themselves that it has value to build this app. So they are just users. They don't know where the things that work or don't work on the app are there. So in order for them to be able to tell the story, you have to have some kind of like defensive code where you protect the user from having a crash or having a big alert that says this operation is not valid because it's not implemented, right? So it feels good. I mean, it's adrenaline for developers. It's always fun to do it. I believe I have only had one where I actually had a crash on it. And I mean, big companies do them all the time, right? You have seen demos from Microsoft with the blue screen since 1998. So it happens, and nowadays everybody laughs. I mean, it's part of development.
Would you say that that was your most challenging project so far with Propelics?
Having built 2 prototypes in 1 week was definitely a big one. The other one is catching up on a project that it was not delivered by us or developed by us. And the customer said, you guys come and fix it. And we have this deadline. So catching up and picking up somebody else's work, it was really, really hard. That one has probably one of the biggest rewards because it went well and we actually helped the final users. So that was one. And then the other one is a big project, right? A 1-year project that it is going to change the entire how the business runs, the entire perspective for them. It's going to affect 6,000 users in that company. That has been another one that it is challenging. It has performance issues, UI, UX. We have so many screens that it is so easy to commit a mistake and that looks different. But when you're testing it, you can actually see it. And you can actually, it feels when you're using the app that something is quite not right. You have massive amounts of data loaded into that app. So how do you make the best out of what you have? We have technology limitations, but I mean, the final users don't care.
Yeah, so that kind of gets us to the something I've heard you talk about often is code quality. Talking about working with somebody else's code, and it's like with moving, if everything's not in the right box and you can't find it, why don't you just talk a little bit about why you think code quality is important for the technical team as well as for the business behind it?
Code quality is something that you don't often see as a final user. It's something that it is going to affect or reward the team within it. We try to make our code in a very high quality way that if we come up into the same code base a year after, because there's going to be new changes on that specific app, we kind of like understand what we did. Sometimes there is workarounds, and sometimes, as I said, we have technology limitations. And we built this little hack within a specific screen that it just works. And if we don't document it, if we don't understand it, if we don't put readable code around it, we just grab it from somewhere else and we didn't really know what the fix was. If we have to come to this screen in a year, we're going to be in trouble. You will probably create regressions. Mm-hmm. The code is less maintainable, right? What happens if you, as a company, you don't have the same development team and they jump into an old app and they're like, we don't understand. There is no code comments. There is no technical documentation. There is no even a presentation on how the architecture is going to work. There is like nothing. It's just files with lines of code with business logic, complex business logic. So you are in a very tough position. So as consultants, we try to deliver the code that we do with the highest quality, just because, or at least if it's a hack and if it's a workaround, we specify it with a sense that we're going to deliver the code. I always tell the development team that at some point the customer is going to actually go and look at the code. So if you are not proud of it or you don't understand it, then you should probably do something different. That's the whole reason. There's people that said that coding is the new art, or you can make art by coding. Mm-hmm. I believe that in any business, having everything organized, files, actual paper files, or having email consolidated, or having just all the service order or the invoices in an order It makes your business successful. So why would code be different?
You have a long history with Accelerator, and we do about 90% of our work is done in a mobile application development platform.
84.
And the rest is native. So what do you think about these platforms and the current state of the platforms and where you think they're going? You think they're going to take over, and we think pretty soon we'll be doing all of our development in these platforms?
The whole purpose of a platform is to have an enterprise solution ready. What the native offers you is the tools to build apps, and you can decide if you're going to be on an enterprise grade or a consumer grade or I don't know, training, education. There are many, many areas where you can focus on, including open source. So what the platforms offer you are some enterprise grade capabilities and a way for you to standardize your process, and we just talk about code quality and just having everything in the right place. There is definitely a business market. And the reason why we're sure about that is because there are many options and big customers work with them. And we kind of like work more with one, but that doesn't mean that we don't evaluate the rest of them. So that's the reason. There is definitely a market. There is definitely something that you can take advantage on. Now, will they take over against native? The answer is no. You still have to have native. Me as a company that have 5 apps, I may have 4 that are internal, but I may have 1 that is consumer. And with everything that you get, there is always a trade-off. For example, if you want flexibility on your app, the trade-off is going to be your app is going to be less performant, right? So these platforms that, especially talking about the app development, offer you, for example, cross-platform capabilities. There is definitely a trade-off. Some of them have more, like hybrid apps, like PhoneGap. Some of them have less, like Xamarin or Accelerator Titanium, where you get almost 99.9% native experience, but still there are some limitations. So native is always going to be your most performant. It's going to cost you more to build an app there because you have to have different skill sets and you have to have more time dedicated to building these apps. But if it's a consumer one, if it's your flagship app that all your customers are going to see it, then it may be worth to invest on it. If it's an internal app that you are good with 90% and Accelerator or Xamarin offers you 99% of the user experience that you need, okay, you're in a pretty good shape. So you can probably save a lot of time by doing cross-platform in a single platform or mobile application development platform. So it will get you to where you need with a little bit of overhead. Okay, so the current state is you have to reevaluate what the market is almost every year. We keep hearing that mobile is going to be big since probably like 2011 or 2010. And this is the year that mobile is going to be big. I have heard that story so many times.
Every year.
Platforms are getting ready and they're adding more stuff, analytics, crash reporting, performance management, automated testing. There are many, many things that get added to this platform. Some customers find value in one. Some customers, I do have the whole analytics suite, but I never look at it. So that's probably more like a business process. There has been many changes this year on the mobile application development platforms. Mobile is still big, and every year is happening, right? But this year we have the Accelerator acquisition by Axway. We have the Xamarin acquisition by Microsoft, which is the tough components of native mobile application development platforms, and they are being absorbed by other companies. So you have to evaluate where this is going and if it's still the right fit for you. Nowadays, native has also offered, like for example, iOS offers you analytics and crash reporting out of the box. They also offer you a way for you to have like an internal app store with TestFlight. And I'm talking about iOS because that's the most experienced platform that I have worked on, talking about native. Mm-hmm. But there are similarities around Android as well as Windows. So it's moving. For example, Microsoft just announced that they're offering Xamarin for free. We don't know if this technology is going to be rebranded as something else, or maybe Microsoft budget is going to say, you know what, we're not going to spend that amount of resources and money on Xamarin. We're actually going to focus on Windows 10 universal apps. So based on that, it's a good moment to rethink and reevaluate. And if you are a paying customer, go and talk to your provider and say, hey, you know what, my concerns are like, now that you have been acquired, you Xamarin, you Upsolitor, what are you going to do? What is the plan around that? What is your roadmap? How is this going to integrate with your previous projects or with the bigger company projects? They're great tools. They will get you going. They will get you going faster than native. With these acquisitions, it's a good time to just go back and reevaluate. But overall, I don't think any of those two are going to disappear. I personally think that they're great tools. They have great community, great developer community. There's a lot of enterprises using them. But there is always that little but after an acquisition happens, like the owner of that technology change. What are their plans?
That you also code in Swift. And so I'm wondering how you feel about working in Swift, as well as how you feel about, the recent success of Swift in terms of how it's managed to migrate across platforms.
There's a lot of things going on Swift. Since it was announced, it was kind of like a hybrid between Objective-C and JavaScript and some scripting, and there was a lot of change of paradigms. But the adoption, other than just developers that were looking for new technologies, the adoption on the enterprise was slow. People were still building Objective-C apps. They were still maintaining it. There was a few outliners like Lyft that rebuilt the entire app on Swift as soon as it was out. So there were people trying it. There was still a lot of noise around it. The language was not fully defined. And then we come up with Swift 2 last year. So Apple announced Swift 2, and the biggest announcement was, you know what? Swift is going to be open source. So what Apple is doing is try to remove any barrier from other technologies or other landscapes other than iOS and OS X,
right,
to have a good set of developers that they can build an OS X iOS app, or they can build another app. And we're going to get to Microsoft, and also we're going to touch a little bit with Google too. So Swift as open source, it's a big change. Now everybody can go and take a look at the code. And you can actually make it work on different hardwares and different technologies too. So I have seen spin-offs of Swift to do backend development, web front-end development. And with Windows 10 Universal Apps, what they're doing is basically saying, bring your Swift code. We will take it, compile it, and run it on Windows. You still have to worry about the UI, but it's not as hard as having to rewrite the entire app. Now, there is in the news another article that piqued my eye around Swift, which is there is an actual pull request on the Swift repository that enables basic support for Android. So this is even a bigger move than what Microsoft is doing. We're talking about the two main competitors on the mobile landscape, iOS and Android, one backed by Objective-C and one backed by Java as the language, right? So now we see Google's interest in supporting Swift to build Android apps. That is a major change in a way that you can stop using Java. A lot of developers don't like Java. Now there is a new option, and not only technology-wise, but also political-wise. Like the two biggest competitors, they're trying, or at least Google did the first step to support Apple's language, which is, it has only been done by mobile application development platforms like Upsolitor or Xamarin before, but never the actual companies. So now I would recommend for developers to really invest time on understanding Swift and understanding how it works, because this is going to get big and it's getting bigger every day. There is projects within Apple, there is companies rebuilding their entire Objective-C apps to support Swift. Now, if you add Android to the mix and you can reuse a lot of code there, then for the enterprise, this is a huge opportunity to invest in a development team that supports Swift.
So do you think this is going to affect like the entire course of enterprise mobility? I mean, high level view, Cesar, where do you see enterprise mobility going in the next 5 years?
Technology-wise, there's going to be opportunities on VR. There is definitely a market there. And VR experiences are getting big this year. So we're going to see more of that. We're going to see integrations with the bots. Facebook announced their bot framework, and also Microsoft at Build 2015 announced bot integration. So the bots are going to become a big thing around messaging and customer support and customer contact for the companies. Mobile, it's still going to mature a little bit more. We have to know if Swift is taking over, or you're going to be able to develop Android apps on Swift and Windows apps on Swift. How does that put the mobile application development platforms? They still offer analytics and crash reporting and some other tools, but they also offer SDKs that you may not need anymore if you have Swift developers. There is still a market for other tools like JavaScript and .NET for Xamarin and Observator, just because you have JavaScript developers and .NET already there, and it's easier to transfer than to hire a new team. So mobile is going to continue to mature. Bring your own device is still going to be big, and more companies are going to be able, just because as an employee, okay, you work in a company that it is secure, but having to carry 2 cell phones is just complicated. You have to have 2 chargers every time you travel. It's like bringing your laptop and also bringing the laptop from work on every trip. It's just too tough, right? So there is going to be more mature around security, and how do we make sure that if it's your corporate device, then you can have maybe a personal app like outside of that security bridge, or if it's your own device because you prefer that and it's better than what the company offers, how do they make sure that they're secure with their information? So a lot of maturity on the mobile landscape, a lot of interactions with the new emerging technologies, VR, the bot framework. We're still going to see more and more user experience, like more native user experience as of the screens, and more standardized user experience.
For me, I wonder some of those things like we kind of thought that beacons were going to be big, and then those never really caught on. And then people were talking about sort of targeting micro moments, and that hasn't really happened yet. And now bots are big, and VR, I love VR, but I just wonder if it's going to turn out to be one of these sort of kitschy things where it'll show up a lot in marketing and entertainment, but I just wonder if it'll penetrate into the enterprise.
So I do agree. There was the beacons. Beacons are going to be big, and the concept of a beacon, we were expecting to leave pieces of, or just devices, components with Bluetooth around places and for them to interact. But we do use beacons. I mean, any Bluetooth BLT gadget that you have can be considered a beacon, and you can do something with that to map, to understand where you are on a home. Now we have like lights, and pretty much you can do whatever you want. You have Amazon Echo in your home. You have the Philips Hue. You have so many technologies that can act as a beacon. So I think beacon didn't go through because the concept of a beacon was just wrong. But the ability to extend the mobile device with different pieces, that's something that it's happening. Smart homes and HealthKit and HomeKit and all those frameworks that Apple is providing for developers to understand, they can use some sort of beacons. I guess beacons was thought about like, I want to be able to, I don't know, arrive my home and 15 feet away from my home, it's going to unlock by itself. And it can be done. there was a market for that. It didn't penetrate the entire enterprise because the only use case that anybody could think was, well, mapping the conference rooms with beacons.
Or like we're going to push specials to your phone when you walk into a supermarket.
Yeah, retail still has an opportunity
Yeah.
there, and there is people using it. Like I go to an Apple store, and if I get close to the cases, I actually get a notification on my phone that says, hey, these are the cases or these are the promotions. So Apple is using it. It's not gonna change the entire enterprise or all the enterprises, but there are use cases. I would say that the downside is that it requires a lot of investment just because you have to buy for all your stores. For Apple, it's really simple because any iOS device can be turned into a beacon.
Right.
So you don't have to spend time or money to get beacons. They still have to show the phones, right? So you might as well use them. So beacons was there. VR, it's exactly the same. There's going to be a market for that. There's going to be a specific use cases. For example, I don't know, retail is a perfectly good use case. I guess a lot of people, we spend a lot of time on retail stores, so that's where all the ideas come from. Where, for example, I have a new employee that is going to be in charge of a store, then I can train them in a virtual store. I don't think as a customer, I would like to see everything on a virtual store. You can, but I don't think I would like it yet. Probably new generations will like it to see everything like that. So there is going to be a market and an opportunity, interactions with a little bit of ambience around it. Like, let's say I'm on the pharma industry and I help my customers to kind of like know what their disease is and how to live with it. I don't know. You have many use cases. So in order for you to train the trainers, VR is a good idea because you can have a different set than just your office or your corporate office to do that. So there is a market. It's not going to change and everything is going to be VR. The main reason of that is that there's still a lot of people that go to the movies and they don't like 3D. So if we don't like 3D, how would you like that entire VR set, right?
Right.
There's a lot of people that go to 2D movies and they like it. I have a friend that tells me like, well, it's either I go and look everything on 3D, but it is dark, or I look everything on 2D, but it is bright. So I prefer bright. There is a lot of people that they like the old school. So VR is not going to change the entire world and everything is going to be VR. I don't expect that. And personally, I wouldn't want it. So there's going to be market opportunities, interact with your phone, interact with web services, and create experiences around that. And there's going to be a whole set of companies that are going to be looking for that. They're going to require analytics on where a user is looking. Like that could be a new market, like analytics around VR.
Yeah. I wonder if you could use VR to plan out your spaces and, put people in a VR environment of what if our store was laid out this way? Which way would the traffic patterns be? And, test people in these virtual environments and then design your store based around the analytics there as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, let's think about where does VR apply, which is I'm an architect. So right now I can give you the blueprints. I can probably create the full render for you. But what if I can put that render, that 3D render into a VR out of the box? And then you as my customer, you're going to be able to walk and see the spaces and see how this is going to look like, right? Yeah. So you don't have to spend millions building your building or $1 million building a house and just to find out that there is something that you don't like as a customer.
Right.
VR may be a good market for them.
Yeah.
The same things that have changed mobile and are making mobile to mature are going to help other technologies too. You don't know if the investment on beacons is worth, but if you have analytics around them, then it'd probably be a big thing. Or that if Apple says, well, in all my stores, 40% of the people that come to the store open the app because of a beacon alert, then it will probably make the retailers think about it twice in the investment because you're creating interactions with your app and then you have other promotions and then you make them install the app. So there is an opportunity there.
This takes us right into our final topic, which is a tool that we're working on at Propelics, which is a mobile app cost estimation tool. Just like to get your thoughts around the importance of estimations in mobile development.
It's always something complicated. For one developer, it may take 1 hour. For another developer, it may take 6. So how do you track that? There are many challenges. And most of the time, based on the estimation, is the budget you get, right? To build the app. How many people do you need for how much time? And how many UI UX and how many QA people? Everything is around the estimation. So you as company can allow a budget, or you as a service company can go and actually sell projects. So as you say, we're working on something built out of experience. We have had single platform apps, cross-platform apps, 2 native apps, a web admin, a big backend app, apps without the backend, apps that only need authentication. So there are many, many variables to consider. What we're doing is trying to help our customers and our audience to estimate their apps with a real budget, right? Sometimes we get into a project where the budget that it is there, it was estimated by somebody, but it doesn't really get us where we want to be, not even the MVP app that we need. So what the tool is going to provide is a realistic budget that you need to have to build an app, that it is enterprise grade and it is ready to be maintained and extend. You can spend more money or less money. We're trying to ensure that you have a quality app. If you spend less than that, then you will probably not get the quality that you need to maintain it. If you spend more, then you will probably spend that amount more in UI UX, in just the specific transitions, making sure that the experience, a good example would be a consumer app that you gotta impact your customers with the user experience, then we might as well spend a little bit more there. So that's where we are. That's where we're trying to get. There's a lot of people involved because everybody runs their own numbers and estimations. Everybody has a different experience. So maybe one of the numbers, maybe one integration with a specific backend is a totally different game. And we need to account for that. So we're always welcome to feedback.
So just to maybe help out folks out there who might be listening or at companies who are thinking about taking on some mobile app development in the near future, what aspects of app development should they be focusing on in terms of their budget?
In order for you to understand, you got to make sure that you spend enough time and money figuring out if this is going to be used. You can have the best app ever, but if your users don't see value or they're not going to use it, then you're out. It's just a waste of money. So spending the right time trying to figure out if this is going to work, if this is a good idea, if this will make their process better, if there is immediate value out of it. Now, the next one is spend a good amount of time and money and resources designing the app. If you are going to support 2 platforms, make sure that you investigate Windows and iOS, or Android and iOS, or whatever the platforms you're supporting. The human guidelines or the UI UX guidelines from the platform. A lot of times there's pretty designs that don't follow any of the standard iOS designs, and we can build it, but that doesn't mean that their users are going to be able to understand it and use it right out of the box. And if you really want to go that way, make sure you have a training path and budget to do the training. Otherwise, you're going to fall into the point number 1, which is nobody's using your app. Now, make sure you have different phases and you know what you want on your first phase. So the estimation tool can help you to get there. If there is something that you can think you can put it on a phase 2, then you should probably put it on your backlog. And then, of course, spend enough time doing development. Be realistic with your development times. If your top developers say, this is going to take 6 weeks, just because you go back to them and say 5 weeks, and they will probably agree, that doesn't mean that it is going to be less. And this is not about mobile. This is since web. Just because we say a number based on the budget, it doesn't mean that it is going to be done. And if it's done, just remember that the quality may not be the best because you were in a hurry. And then last but not least, and really important, make sure you have estimated time to do QA. Right? Make sure that app is being tested, used, stress testing, load testing. Make sure that your servers can handle, I don't know, 10,000 users at the same time, if that's your user base, right? Otherwise, you're on D-Day, you're ready to send the app, and you send it, and people start cramming, and the server falls down. What's the attention time that a user gives you? It's less than 30 seconds, if I remember. So if you make it wrong, then you're out.
That's right. Well, Cesar, thanks so much for hopping on and taking the time to have this talk. And folks out there, thanks for listening in. And stay tuned for the next episode of Device Squad, the enterprise mobility podcast from Propelics. See you on the next job.
Sounds good.
My wife just came home. I got to get back to my packing. Does that make sense? Am I saying that right?
I'm not sure.